Welcome and thank you for joining me in this episode Uncovering Musical Journeys with Marina Petrov. Marina is an award-winning classical pianist, experienced piano educator and lecturer, specialized in preventing occupational injuries in keyboard players. She has over 30 years of experience in teaching junior and adult pianists, from beginners to highly advanced music professionals. Marina is a former child prodigy, toured as a concert pianist, winning many competitions and prizes, and I'm grateful for her sharing with us today her experience, her story, her expertise, and knowledge on healthy piano technique. Marina, welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
It's a great pleasure to be interviewed again, although this time we're going to discuss some other issues, I believe, instead of around the globe International Music Festival.
Yes, you're famous for running the Around the Globe Music Festival, which has supported musicians all over the world. So it's a fantastic job you're doing there. But today we're going to discuss occupational injuries and injury prevention and healthy piano technique, which you are an expert in. So what prompted you to start exploring the subject of injuries among musicians?
Well, it's actually, believe it or not, started from my childhood because I started to play the piano at a very early age. um, uh, as many children, around 5.5, 6 years of age. And I got very quickly, uh, very fond of the piano, and, practice quite a lot. They have found that I'm very musical, that, the piano is really kind of uh, part of my nature, playing the piano, I mean. And so, very swiftly, within a year and a half, after learning to play the piano, I started to actually uh, uh, um, uh, play at the concerts, festivals, competitions, um, and you start winning prizes and practice quite a lot. But because I was given, I think, a bit more advanced repertoire than uh, I should I should play after year and a half. Um, my technique perhaps was not up to the standards, and therefore uh, I start with a lot, practicing a lot. Of course, I started to practice maybe at first an hour a day, then it went to 2, 3, 4 hours, and then quite early I started developing, maybe at the age of 9 or 10. I started to develop some form of uh, kind of pains in my hands, in my arms, um, because I was a little girl, not quite tall, and my hands were small. But I often played some repertoire that was for bigger hands and so on.
Right.
So
And this was advanced music, was it?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, because by the, for example, my personal experience about when I really kind of thought this is really not very good and it caused me pain and I didn't enjoy is when I was, I think I was age, how old I was? I think I was about 10 years old or maybe 9 years old when I already played Schubert Impromptu at one of the competitions in E flat major, Opus 90.
Right.
And I liked to, because I was very temperamental girl,
Mm.
and I like to play it very fast. And when you have the middle part,
Yeah.
kind of that forte and so on. And uh, after many hours of practice, it was actually I was in agonizing pain
Yeah.
when practicing.
So was it
Um,
the way you were practicing or the sheer workload or a combination then?
it was the combination
Mm.
of the two. Because my first teacher, I don't think she was from Belgrade. I was, started this specialist school to attend in Belgrade. I will not name her at this point. And she really could not. First of all, I don't think that she had experience with gifted children, and so I was the first one really like that.
Mm.
So she pushed me to the limit, and in implementing certain strange things about the technique, for example, to raise elbows and things like that, very unusual.
Yeah.
Although prior to that, I was uh, um, had a had a it's for 3 months when I was about age of 7.5 or 7. Um, I was chosen by Professor Timakin along with many other gifted children, including Ivo Pogorelic, to actually work with him for 3 months. He arrived from Central Music School for Gifted Children from Moscow to work with us.
Right.
So we were chosen by him of many, many, many children. And he put it a very good technique. But later on, after that, so I had a great success and did my first piano solo recital of 40-45 minutes at the age of uh, 8. And after that, 8 or maybe even younger, I can't remember. It was a long time ago, as you can imagine. But after that, continuing with her, it was a very different experience, and it was going down the hill. So I think it was combination of both me practicing a lot and practicing with wrong arm posture,
Right.
and on which she insisted. So really,
Did it
the
have some relevance though? The arm the movements she was teaching you, would it perhaps have been okay had you? Would it was it a bad technique altogether, or was it?
no, it was not completely bad technique, but as I said, she was pushing me to raise my elbows, uh, um, um, and kind of, if you can imagine, like that.
Yeah.
And she would put her, her finger
Yeah.
when I was playing
Yeah.
on my elbow, so I would
Raise them.
keep it
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
there,
Okay.
and that would involve my shoulders, and
Yeah.
so on and so on, so
Yeah.
on. So she was really
Yeah.
uh, 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 insisting on that.
Mm.
And I think that was one of the reason. And I remember playing Schubert, which is very fast. That theater,
Yeah.
and she would kind of keeping my elbows up. Can
Right.
you imagine?
Okay. Right.
So that was an old-fashioned school.
Yeah.
When the teacher kind of insisted to that
Mm.
extent. So after those experiences that I had, obviously I went to do a lot of therapy, visited a lot of doctors, consultants for
Right.
on this issue.
So it got quite
Um,
serious.
oh yes, it became quite serious.
Were
It became
you
quite.
in its serious, at its most serious stage? How much piano practicing could you do without pain?
It's very difficult to say because it was a long time ago, but I believe uh, at one point, even after 10 minutes.
Yeah. Because it's interesting
Uh,
you say, because I have a, we're not going to go into my experience today, but
yeah,
I suffered from a similar thing with a repetitive strain injury, which went into tendonitis and everything else, which is why I went down the route that I did, studying, really studying healthy piano techniques, and
yeah,
which is why I wrote the Hey Presto book as well. But we're obviously talking about you today. But I do obviously have a lot of sympathy and understanding of what the pain that it is not being able to play the piano. And I similarly get 5 minutes and then I had to stop playing because of my burning forearms. And so
Yeah.
I really appreciate what you're telling us today.
Yeah, but what to say to you? Because I was so determined. I love my piano. I was really, by then, by the age of 9, 10, 11, I was in love with music.
Mm.
And so I would actually practice over pain, which was actually even worse.
Yes, yeah, I understand. I did the
Uh,
same.
Yes. So that was another thing. Although on certain days, especially after the therapy, and some therapies it was very good, like hydrotherapy, like paraffin therapy.
Right.
So these sort of things I was going like ultrasound therapy.
Yeah.
So this sort of thing helped me a lot as a child, which these days I don't know unless you are on private
Yes.
medical NHS. We don't have this,
No.
unfortunately, for because these therapies are used also for the sportists, especially in those days. So we are talking 70s
Yes.
there, and they were quite good. And so I would take a break while having the therapy for a couple of weeks and then go back, and then I was better. And that's how I managed
Right.
to actually have this winning streak and still winning the prizes and
Yeah.
so on up to
So
age
you dealt.
of 11 and a half,
So you were dealing with
almost
the
12.
symptoms, but not actually the primary cause at this stage.
Yes, yes, yeah. And my parents couldn't understand. They hoped for the better. They couldn't understand that that was due to several factors, because they didn't think that when the child, which is growing, practicing 6 hours a day and sometimes missing schools when touring,
Yeah.
um, when having, touring around Yugoslavia as a first prize winner, as a child prodigy. I was on TV often,
Right.
on radio, and so on, etc., etc. They thought that that's quite common thing, because both of them they were not
Yeah.
musicians, and so they also could not understand that it could be due to wrong technique. So they had to learn themselves in a process uh, how to actually help me and seek advices elsewhere from other prominent musicians, I mean, pianists, as well in Yugoslavia and in other countries, including Soviet Union. So uh, that's how things start to move in the right direction, because they had to understand what's wrong with me.
Right.
So
So at what point was
took
it?
up.
What was the worst part then about it? Because you mentioned you were in the hospital. Then I suppose for your
Yes.
injuries,
Yeah.
doing ultrasound and other kind of therapies.
Yeah.
Um, was there, because usually the doctors would often say, well, you have to stop doing whatever it is you're doing that's causing the pain. Was there any, what was the biggest advice you were given? Was it to stop altogether, or that you just make things?
Well, the the climax of this, or the pinnacle, shall we say, culmination of all this was actually going to the specialist. Uh, um, it's a specialist clinic and a hospital for professional injuries. That was there was no of such things in Yugoslavia, so one was in Soviet Union,
Right.
and so we went there to Kiev. Kiev had, which is now capital of Ukraine, had such a hospital, which again it was advised by some other musicians, prominent musicians at the time. to actually visit and examine me. And what they came to the conclusion that all this, because I had actually problem with my sleep as
Mm.
well, some depressions, obviously. Again, that was not recognized by regular doctors or specialists in Yugoslavia, but they have recognized that I have quite an issue here. And if I would continue to practice with those pains and being pushed to the limit, that I could not only stop playing the piano, but I might lose the hands, and my whole nerve system was,
At risk.
yes,
So,
at risk.
so that would really, it's going to really make a big impact personally and professionally. So what
Yeah.
kind of measures then did you take? Was it the measures from the, did you have to come up with some alternative way of playing the piano? Did the doctors say, no, you've just got to rest for 6 months? Or,
Well, yes, thank you, Marcel. The advice was to actually stop playing for a year.
right,
After I was in the hospital for uh, professional, occupational injuries for a month.
right,
And that was during the summer, so there was no school. And, that included also the advice to change my life pattern, so I could actually sleep, for my nervous system to calm down. The diet was very important.
mm,
That's why I learned about the diet for the first time
right,
there, that actually can improve. So not just kind of therapies and things like that, but the whole lifestyle had to
right,
change. Um, Including they advised me also to stop writing for 6 months,
right, okay,
so to use my hands altogether to that extent. So some natural movement, but nothing excessive. And when I went back to Belgrade with this sort of advice from doctors,
mm,
the teachers took it very seriously. They understood, because at school as well, I often performed at normal school, not music school,
mm,
not competition.
yeah,
So I often performed at the pupils' concerts and stuff like that.
mm.
So I was a little star
Yeah.
in my school as well. So they took it seriously and they tried to help me. So they were the teachers, all in all, were very understanding. Um, so that was very, how to say, challenging time for me. I was even my mother and father were saying to me, maybe you're not going to become a pianist.
This is soul
Uh,
destroying, isn't it? Really, when you
yes,
put all this time and you have this passion for music, and then
yes,
you've gone from
yes,
4 or 5 whatever hours a day to nothing.
yes.
That's a,
That was quite a dramatic,
it's a
yeah.
shock to the system.
Absolutely, absolutely, mentally, emotionally, and so on. And then I had a year to think about it. I did love, I mean, a lot of different things. I loved medicine, to learn about medicine, especially. I read a lot of books about psychology, even at 13. Oh, sorry, yeah, 13,
Mm,
because I was around 12, 13 at the time. I like literature, poetry, and I wrote some poetry myself, on which I won once the first prize for my poem and so on. So there were other interests for me to follow. But then, no, music was my first love,
yeah,
and playing the piano. So I said to my parents, even after that 1 year, no, I'm going to stick with the piano
right.
and music.
And so, what was the? Because obviously you've got then a big, long recovery process, and who was responsible, or was there any specific other ways to rebuild your piano technique? Was it? Did you research these, or did you find a teacher that understood?
Yes.
Or
Then, of course, I changed the teacher. She was very famous in Belgrade. Her name was Mirjana Lisa Šuica Babić.
Right.
So to you, and it's quite uncommon name, but in Serbia now and before in Yugoslavia, she was very famous teacher,
Right.
and she worked at the specialist school Mokranjac, um, and so I became her student. And actually, um, Ivo Pogorelic was also her student when he was little and before leaving to Soviet Union to study at Central Music School for Gifted Children. And so she was a brilliant lady, um, very understanding, and her, she taught me the correct technique. However, I must stress out that she never had experience with a child like myself and who was injured before. So after that, I could not pick up my talent to that extent. I was frustrated.
Was this because she was limiting what work you could tackle? Did she limit your hours of playing? Did she?
No, no, she didn't do that. But for example, she could understand that my technique needs to be built up very gradually. So not before long, she would give me sonatas of Beethoven like Pathetique
Which was
almost after a month.
which you could get a
After
good repetitive strain injury doing that.
exactly. So she didn't have experience with that much. And so then I had some other teachers and private teachers, but then by then, my parents, especially my mom, she was very much into music. And so she started to looking around for some other advice from other pianists in Belgrade, and later on from Russia, Kiev, Moscow. So she started taking me all over, to these specialist teachers who understood, and that's how I started to make progress
Right.
and actually recover. To me, it was crucial when I went at age of 15 to study with Lydia Borisovna Shur in Kiev for a year. And because she was working with another teacher, they kind of worked together.
Right.
One was actually focusing very much on technique and all the special exercises
Right.
after the injury, and sorry, and she was working more on music side of it. Um, so within a year, I was fully back to my own self.
Fully back.
And
Is it
yes,
possible to recover fully from such a significant injury, or is it more about managing and mitigating effects over time?
well, within that year, I believe I fully recovered because I forgot all my pains.
Well, that is
They were
remarkable, isn't it?
non-existent. I didn't feel any limitation anymore.
Yeah.
Um, because Lydia Borisovna Shur told me at the time that if I don't change certain habits,
Mm.
which I inherited from previous years,
Mm.
that I most probably won't be able to play everything what I like or be a professional pianist of the high caliber.
Right. So really, we're talking from age 7 to age. It took really 7 or 8 years for you to have the right to get the right teaching, and obviously therapy helped as well. But it took about 7 or 8 years before you were able to properly play again the
Yeah.
repertoire that you wanted with pain
Yes.
free.
Yes. Pain free. Yes. Pain free, and uh, because sometimes frustrations, even after that 1 year of gap, The frustration came because certain things would not come out the way you want. The fingers wouldn't listen.
Yeah.
Is because you had a year gap.
Yes.
For a child, a 1 year of gap from the instrument,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
very long period of time. It's not like
Especially,
with,
especially as your
yeah,
body is growing as well, and so the
exactly.
physicalities, even your hands will be a different size.
Yes,
And
yes,
so this is why I think being regularly practicing as you're growing up, obviously in the right
yeah,
way, is really important. Any
yeah,
large gaps, then
yes,
it can all feel different. It can feel different if if you're already fully grown adult and don't play for a while. But
yes,
I think
exactly.
if you're growing as well, then it's
Yes,
even more, it's even
yes,
stranger coming back to it.
yes.
So
So
remarkable
this
recovery.
journey, yes. So this journey that I had for 7 years, I actually learned to understand more about piano technique. And subconsciously, I always, throughout my kind of student life as a pianist, I was always searching for teachers who were uh, uh, very knowledgeable about technique, and it, I try to acquire the best knowledge for piano technique and free of tensions. So there is not one person I'm talking about. There are many, but I was always searching
That had an
for those,
understanding. Yeah.
yes, teachers with this understanding and that knowledge, because not all the teachers, even the most famous one, or famous pianists, even, you know, actually most famous pianists that I have met, and had master classes with them and so on, they often don't know about this.
No,
Uh,
no.
because they didn't have this sort of journey like I
Yeah.
had, or they find easy to play. And I have many even colleagues who don't know about it because they don't know what it's all about.
Mm.
They didn't have any kind of problems developing their technique, and it was such natural to them.
No.
So how would they know how to help
Mm.
a child or a professional or adult
Mm.
to actually combat this matter? So you really have to have a higher knowledge.
Yes. Well, it's
Um,
amazing. I run the Facebook group Adult Piano Beginners, but there are various other groups out there as well, and there are lots of beginner pianists, experienced pianists too. All many that say they've got pains in their arms, pains in their hands, tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, you
yes,
name it, they've got it.
that's quite common.
And it is quite
Yes,
common, and I don't think people realise how until you see in a group like this how many people are suffering, and you're not the only
yeah,
one.
yes,
How important the right teaching is, especially if you're going to be sitting at the piano for any extended period of time. So
yes, yes. And when we are talking about sitting extensive period of time and things like that, that's why I have realized how important is the body posture
yeah.
in front of the instrument.
Well, yes, that's good. That's what I was wanting to come on to next, actually, because on your website, you talk about well, you go into quite a lot of depth about posture and physical health, and so it's a good moment now to probably talk about that. So, can you
Yes,
then elaborate why
yes.
posture is so crucial for musicians and pianists in general?
Well, let's start first of all. If one wants to play for a long hours,
Yeah,
the body has to cope with it. And so, if the body posture in front of the instrument is not correct, you will soon, after an hour or two, start to have back pain,
yeah,
shoulder pain, not to talk about arms. So let's forget about arms.
yeah,
Even depends, even a foot pain, because if your body posture is not correct in front of the instrument, you will feel uh, very uncomfortable using the pedal all the
yes, that's right.
time. Because to my lifetime, as a piano teacher, which I started to actually teach quite early, in my early 20s. And by then, I have learned a lot about the body posture and these techniques, the lifestyle, which so many professional musicians would come to me, including jazz, including pop and rock musicians, would you believe or not,
Yeah.
who actually had these problems. But uh, jazz musicians were quite many of them,
Right.
and they had a lot of aches and pains and so on, not knowing about it. So what I'm saying to you is that any style of, of pianist, whatever classical or jazz or any other
Yeah.
style player, could have this problem.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It depends what kind of repertoire
Yes.
you want to play. So as I said, the body posture, that's the ABC. So when my students are coming to me, I teach them whatever, whoever is advanced we are talking about this, if I'm noticing that something is wrong. The most important thing is that in order for our arms to work properly, we have to have a distance between our body and the instrument.
Yeah.
And for the last 20 years, since the computer
Yes.
became so popular, I've noticed that many uh, pianists, whatever, young or older, are sitting very close to the piano and therefore not able to use their arms appropriately.
No.
Um, uh, and I think this habit became because of the computer. They're
Right.
almost imagining
Yeah.
there in front of the computer.
Yes.
So I'm not going to go into depth about other kind of, because there is a position, hands and
Yes.
arms, uh, but we have to understand anatomy of our body
Yes.
to actually position our hand and body in front of the instrument. So the first thing is to think about what I said, the space between the body and the instrument. Also, we have to think about the length of our arms. Yeah,
Yes.
because not all the arms, because some arms are shorter. So that's how. So you have to adjust depending on your body. I
Yes.
keep saying, and there is no complete rule for all because we are different. But the other thing about the hand posture, whatever hand posture you're choosing, um, uh, we have to understand that fingers are working and they're very fast from the knuckle
Mm.
and not from any other parts, including the thumb.
Mm.
So if the thumb is too low, it cannot move, we have to move the hand.
Yeah.
So as I said, if you're kind of just thinking about those, understanding how it works and anatomy and
Yeah.
how the fingers are working, then you will come to a conclusion how to position your hand.
Yes.
So as I said, I'm very much, and that's how I was taught, very much against. Uh, I was taught like my first lesson. Oh, position your hand like you're holding an apple,
Yes.
and that's so wrong.
It's a
Uh,
common method.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And the reason why it's wrong because all of us can hold an apple on a different way, and usually we do like this,
Right.
holding an apple.
Right.
Many children would just hold and squeeze their
Yeah.
hand and yes,
Right.
and stiffen and so on. So again, it's more like natural because piano agronomically is one of uh, the best instruments, including accordion.
Yeah.
Um, but most of the movements that we are doing on instruments, especially on piano and accordion, are quite natural to us. They exist already, in everyday life.
Right.
So, uh, including the hand posture, including the movements, they have to be quite natural to the, including this rotation that you're talking about,
Yes. I
that
could.
I can do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is quite natural. This is what I'm all about.
Yes. I do.
Uh,
I talk about rotation a lot.
yes,
But
yes,
there's
I
also
know.
other circular motion, I think it's oversimplifying if just to use those two. They are very very important, but there's a whole lot more to it than just obviously just
Yes.
rotating your wrist too.
Yes, exactly. But I'm saying that most of the movements are natural
Yes.
to us.
Yes.
Like, for example, staccato, bouncing the
Yes.
ball.
Yes.
So what is working there? The wrist.
Mm.
Very often, our fingers are doing that, which is like
Yes.
nothing. You see what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
So, Mm, all these sort of things we have to think about, even as teachers, even as pianists, that about this uh, uh, natural movements
Yes.
that we can implement in piano playing, as well as the posture.
Yes.
We just have to know certain sort of, um, I wouldn't say rules, but just understanding how your body works and how the instrument works.
Yes. Okay.
And from there, you can use various methods, but that should be the ground.
Yes.
That should be the basic.
Right. And so really it's about, as well as being taught proper piano playing technique, healthy piano technique, it's about being self-aware as well, understanding one's
Absolutely.
body and try and prevent these injuries from occurring in the first place.
Yes.
On your website also it mentions various exercises and sports for musicians. Now I'm a sporty kind of person. We might disagree on some of the sports that you recommend not doing, but because I've been known to do one or two, not extreme sports, but probably sports I shouldn't be doing. But you mentioned things like swimming and Pilates, which are good things, I imagine.
Yes. Well, swimming, because look, first of all, swimming is uh, helping to build healthily. Uh, of course, swimming in moderation. Everything has to be in moderation. Your shoulder muscles,
Right.
your upper arm muscles, because in piano playing we are using a lot of this.
Mm.
How to say, shoulders and moving of the upper arm. And so, therefore, when we're building up those muscles, shoulder muscles, shoulder blades,
Right.
whatever you like to call them, that's very good and healthy. And this sort of movements also actually, to a certain extent, is used in piano playing. And not just piano playing, but many other instruments as well.
Yes.
So we need to, because shoulder has a big role in shoulders has a big role in our anatomy,
Mm.
uh, because the shoulders are holding our arms
Yes.
from upper arm to elbows and so on and so on. So quite a lot of weight
Right.
shoulders are doing. So developing that, and we actually have this similar exercise in Pilates.
Mm.
Yes, and these movements as well in Tai Chi.
Right.
Yes,
Very good.
very kind of slowly, moderately. Yes, Alexander technique as well,
Right.
teaching you to a certain extent
And what
about
about?
this body posture.
Would you? I've been known to do a few hazardous sports. What about weightlifting and things like that? Would you recommend that?
No, no,
No.
no way. The reason why not weightlifting, and I actually had one student, I won't name him
Yeah.
because he might come back, but he lives in New York at the moment.
Okay.
um, and he came to me with certain problems, um, one of which was mental tension as well.
Right.
But then he was doing this gym and lifting and all this heavy lifting, and he had a pain in his arm. And apart from few other things that we tried to correct over time, I couldn't understand why he's still suffering in one hand
Yeah.
specifically. Uh, some problems, and he was keep telling me it's around here.
Yes.
And I was kind of, then I started to go to ask him more what he does
Yeah.
at the gym and so on. And I came into conclusion that he have hurted his biceps.
I said, right, okay. That's
Um,
quite a common thing to train if you're doing weights.
yes. And therefore, that caused him a lot of
Yeah.
problems playing the piano.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, that's quite hazardous. The other thing as well that especially pianists and other instrumentalists should know that when we are building muscles in the gym with weightlifting, we are actually building these muscles here because the fastness of the fingers, natural fastness, comes from ligaments and muscles which are supple. So all these nerves that are going down and muscles
Yes.
are supporting those ones.
Right.
So if you're building them up, you're making them bigger and stiffer,
Right.
and therefore diminishing your natural
Right. I understand.
ability for speed,
Mm.
physical,
Yes.
because there are natural abilities,
Mm.
physical abilities.
Right.
That's why we, for example, double jointed people have very fast fingers, so they are almost born, or for example, ballerinas as well. So double jointed, it's an advantage, but it's very how to say uh, 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 very gentle and supple ligaments.
Right.
So if you try to build them up, you're actually going to. So even the extension, because we need a lot of extension in piano playing, don't we? As much as we can,
Mm.
because of chords, and if you want to play Rachmaninoff or
Yes.
Brahms and Liszt,
Yep.
yes,
All of that.
or any modern music for that matter,
Yes.
with those, without much of a problem, uh, we need to keep these extensions in the best shape possible. But if you're actually holding and building up those muscles,
Yes.
you will actually diminish this
The
natural,
speed and nimbleness of the fingers and
yes,
agility. Yeah.
agility.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's
that's the
very
word,
interesting.
agility.
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
So this is why I'm not advising, you know, I mean, don't think that that I was a saint and always a good girl.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to, when I was about 12, 13, I wanted to learn judo,
And
which
judo,
very
yes.
good.
And
Yes, judo.
and was that did that? Do you think that was detrimental to piano technique overall?
Well, of course, and plus I could injure myself. And then where we're going with that? Because it's not safe sports for hands. But at the time I was maybe 14 and so on, and that was a lot of talk about how women should be more independent and learn to defend themselves in case they are attacked,
Yeah.
and so on. So I was like, oh yes, I,
Mm.
I need that,
Yeah.
and also when I was in my maybe 25 or 24, I wanted to learn to play tennis.
Yes.
Uh,
A good sport.
but I knew by then, I knew how that it's not good for my piano I'm playing. And therefore, that was during the summer when I took a 4 week course, but I didn't play piano. I just kind of had a holiday from the piano that year,
Right.
but I knew
You knew.
because I had.
Go
When was it? Maybe 15 years ago. One professional pianist came to me in tears, um, and she was supposed to play a Bartok concerto with an orchestra,
Right.
and she was supposed to have rehearsal. So a week later, she would have had this concert, but the rehearsal was like tomorrow or day after tomorrow, something like that. So she came to me in tears. I'm in pain and this and the other, and because Bartok is very
Mm,
demanding
mm.
technically, a lot of stretch again, as we talked about. And I was saying to her, so what did you do? I mean, before she was fine.
Yeah.
Like, help me, I cannot play, I'm in pain, and this and that. And the day before, she went to the tennis court to play tennis with her boyfriend.
Yes. Okay. And she probably took it seriously and tried really hard. And yeah.
Exactly. And then, no, what she did, she went to tennis, and then after that, she went to practice for 3 hours.
Right. Okay.
And that was the killer,
Yes. Yeah, I understand.
So we cannot do that.
No. I think
Absolutely not.
I always have a rule: no hazardous sports. A couple of weeks before a concert,
Exactly.
or a week or so.
Exactly. So what I'm advising, even for example, I had another case. Maybe that was about 5 years ago or so. My student who knew about all this sort of thing, um, and I was preparing him for fellowship diploma, um, at Royal College Fellowship diploma, with Old Ravel. Um, and he also came to me the day after in tears,
Mm.
although we had regular lessons. And I said, what's wrong? Why do we have uh, not kind of scheduled lessons? Why are you so distraught? Oh, I have pains in this and the other, and it's I had to dig deep to actually for him to admit that he was actually doing a removal for his friend
A removal.
of things. He was moving.
All
His
right,
friend
I
was
see.
moving to another
Yes.
house.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
taking all these heavy boxes
Yes.
and this and the other, this and the other.
Yeah.
It took me a while to actually
Yes.
get out of him what
Yes.
he has done. And then after that, like nothing happened, he went to practice his Ravel,
Mm.
oh God, in French, this most famous and most difficult piece that Ravel have written. Can you help me, Marcel?
Possibly. There's quite a few,
Uh,
aren't there? If you're talking piano concertos or the one beginning with
yeah,
G, I think. I can't
yeah.
remember.
Well, in
Offhand.
Russian it's Nochneye Призраки. But anyway,
Yes.
so yeah, it was very difficult piece by
Mm.
Ravel.
Right.
And so again, he practiced maybe 3 or 4 hours
Yeah.
after, so in the evening.
Yeah.
And we can't do this sort of thing.
No.
So we have to be very careful. I mean, he could have done this, help a friend, but not practice that day.
Yes. Yeah.
And nothing would have happened
Yes.
if he would give almost 24 hours or,
Get some rest in between.
rest in
Yeah.
between so the muscles can come back.
Mm. Yeah.
And even so, after you've done such a uh, uh, um, kind of heavy lifting or something heavy with your arms, I'm advising the following day to practice with elastic bandage to support your arms.
With sorry, practicing with.
Elastic, putting elastic bandage like sportists,
Oh right.
when they,
Yeah.
yes, just putting elastic
Right.
bandage for the day after when you practice to support your ligaments and muscles
Right. Okay,
to
that's
avoid this
interesting.
sort of injuries.
Do you
So
mean like one of the straps?
this, yeah, straps, sleeves,
Yes.
elastic
Okay.
sleeves that hold. Sportists use them as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, straps. It could be elastic bandage
Yeah.
straps. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Very interesting.
something. Or you can buy a sleeve and things like
Yes.
that because it happened in my life as well. That I knew how to take
Mm.
precautions and how to react on it, not to aggravate
Right.
the whole thing. So it's very important
Yes.
our how
So,
we lead our lifestyles as musicians.
yeah,
I'm
ahead of any
talking
big.
about professional instrumentalists, because musicians can be composers as well as
Yes.
conductors and so on. They are a different lot, or singers.
So ahead of any large or concert or any practice actually,
Yes,
just to be aware of what you're doing outside of
yes,
music,
yes,
physically.
absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
because we cannot behave like we are, I even teach that my little students, because as you teach them to pay attention to those things, or for example, don't practice with cold hands when it's winter, wear the gloves and things like that. If you keep repeating and
yeah.
repeating, because repeat is
Mm.
mother of all knowledge,
Yes.
really, when we repeat a lot. And they get used to it.
Mm.
So that became part of their lifestyle,
Yes. Yeah.
to pay attention on those things without even thinking too much.
Yes.
So the earlier we start, the better.
Yes, developing the right habits.
Yes.
Just before we go, it'd be good to talk a little bit about the mental stress and performance anxiety, the impact that that has on musicians, and emotional stress and psychological stress. Um, are there strategies for managing anxieties or stage fright?
Well, again, we have to go back into one's well-being. Usually, these anxieties and mental stress and stage frights are happening because one is not very confident and happy with the way how they perform physically.
Right.
Yeah. So if your body feels uh, well and, how to say, comfortable in front of the instrument, your memory, music memory is better. Yes.
Yes.
Your confidence is better. Sometimes we have anxieties because we are not, something is not right there. So maybe not enough practice is done. And but usually has to do with memory.
Mm.
Yeah. Anxiety because not security memory. And I actually had many students with that sort of problem.
Yes.
But when I start addressing the technique and physical and the way how I work on the piece with students, that every single note has to lay down, every single note has to be, you have to be aware,
Mm.
uh, and physically as well as musically.
Mm.
So physically, how you touch, where you touch,
Yeah.
how the finger is working there, the anxiety is gradually disappearing, and therefore memory
Mm.
increases. I I still have one student, she's with me for years and years and years, who had loads of memory problems,
Mm.
loads of anxieties,
Is
and
it?
now she forgotten about it.
Yes. And is
And
there a
it's,
difference between, because I understand what you're saying with understanding every note, and there are many kind of techniques to develop your memory as well. What about self-doubt? Because you may have a brilliant memory, but if you just doubt yourself, but you don't doubt your memory, you can play any other time and you've done all the techniques, and you still just.
well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Doubting yourself is lack of confidence.
Yes. Yeah.
So you're doubting yourself for whatever reasons. So we have to dig deep as teachers
Mm.
to find out where this doubt is coming from.
Mm.
There is, you know, many issues could be, uh, but from the pianistic point of view, we have to look at that first,
Mm.
and then later to see if there is psychological problems, because I had that as well. If there is a psychological problems coming, which nothing has to do with the piano itself, but with the persona,
Mm.
then other therapies could help
Right.
as well. And I, through personal experience, I had one difficult patch in my life here in Britain in 1992. Um, which again had to do with physical injury because I tried too much. I was touring a lot around Britain and teaching a lot. And again, overworking, let's put it this way. And so I started developing aches and pains and something like that. Uh, and then I started to feel more nervous when on the stage.
Yeah.
But that was psychological.
It was psychological. Yeah.
And so some of my friends who were in that field studying psychology, they said, try cognitive therapy,
Cognitive
which I
therapy.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then later on to discover, because I actually at the time had also a fright from flying. So it was all kind of connected in my head.
Yeah.
And so I found that because cognitive therapy actually works, so there is no tablets involved, no nothing. It's actually going to conversation and helping you to discover certain things yourself. But the psychologist is leading you to it, how to resolve certain, it all has to do with our subconscious. So something that we are not conscious about and putting in subconscious. So I found that after 8 sessions, I was cured.
That's amazing, really, to have it cure so quickly as well, because
Yeah.
this is something that people just live with when it's a psychological or historical psychological.
Yeah, I had another example actually more or less recently, maybe 7, 8 years ago, with my long-term student. We couldn't get rid of stage fright, whatever the that I tried to do, and I advised her to do a cognitive therapy, and she did it, and she was all right afterwards.
Right.
She stopped having stage frights
Right.
because the issue was very different that a professional, I mean, professional playing.
Right. Right. Quite
So
incredible.
it depends. It depends on the circumstances, on the, you know, we as teachers could investigate, try this, try that, because we're all very individual. But there are so many different methods that we can implement to actually help. And I'm one of those teachers that always try to find solution to the problem.
Yeah.
There is nothing that cannot be helped. That's my belief, unless the other party does not want to be helped.
Right. Because stage fright is such a big subject as well. Again, in the Facebook groups, when it wasn't until I joined the Facebook groups I realised that so many people do have a problem. They're okay when they're at home playing, and you see so many posts saying, "Oh, I
Yes.
get nervous just recording myself," or but playing in front of some people, they just break down, fall apart. And often it does come down to memory too. Memory
Yeah.
lapses, which is one of the big
Yeah.
things that you were mentioning too.
Yes, yeah. Because what happened to that student of mine that I just mentioned? She just literally would come out to the stage, play the first bar, and after that, she just couldn't remember one thing.
Yes. Ah.
And 10 minutes before that, at the lesson, she would play everything off by heart.
Yes.
So, it was
Strange.
really kind of a
Yeah.
blockage that I didn't know how to deal with
No.
it. But in her case, the cognitive therapy resolved the issue.
Yeah, well, I found a way of dealing with it for me because I used to have stage fright quite severely, and I could never play at my best. And but it wasn't until I really got my memory, uh, just readdressed the whole memory issues, and went through every piece, hands separately, and eyes closed, so that I knew every part of it. And then I did the whole concert, well, every concert pretty much eyes closed, just shut my eyes, and my hands know where they're going. I know they know what they're doing, and they know what they should do. And I actually blink the other way. I blink open. If I've got a big jump or something, my eyes would be shut while I'm playing, quick open and shut again. But I would never ever keep my eyes open because I would risk my memory going. And so,
Really?
yes, so
How interesting.
whereas nowadays I put less importance on playing
Yeah.
from memory now, and I actually
Yeah.
play a lot more with music and do a few less
Because
concerts too.
that's quite famous method actually. which I use, but more advanced, on advanced level.
Right.
It's we call it, well, when I say we, it's because I was taught that from others,
Yeah.
music scholars. We call it practicing on blind.
Right. Okay.
And I would actually, on certain, places, I mean, since my, when I was 15, 16, 17, and so on, literally would practice, force myself, switch off the light
Right.
at night,
Yeah.
and in the dark, practicing with the jumps and stuff like
Good.
that. So, yeah.
You don't need
So,
them when if you put the practice in and you know where the notes are, as long as you get to the
yes.
piano all right, you should be fine. It took a while because I was doing it for a concert, and the first time I tried it, previous to the concert, I was just at home shutting my eyes, no problem in practice. And then I just tried it for a small passage in a concert in a church, and when I shut my eyes for a moment, I felt a little better. And then I said to myself, just keep your eyes closed, just a little
Yes.
longer. And then I was able to do the whole thing pretty much without
Ah,
opening
I
my eyes.
see.
So,
I
yeah.
see. I guess.
And I thought, I think
Yeah.
I've resolved it. And that was the click moment for me. So
Ah, I
it's
see.
been really good talking to you today.
Yes, thank
So
you.
thank you
Thank you.
for.
It was a great pleasure talking to you as well. Yes, we share some common experiences.
Marina, your insights and expertise have been incredibly valuable today. We're truly grateful for your generosity in sharing your experiences and knowledge on maintaining healthy piano technique and preventing occupational injuries. Your journey from child prodigy to award-winning pianist and educator is inspiring, and I'm sure our listeners have gained a wealth of information from our conversation. For those who want to learn more about Marina's work or get in touch with her, you can visit her website at www.marinapetrov.co.uk. There you'll find resources, articles, and information about her workshops and lectures. Once again, Marina, thank you for joining us today and for your dedication to promoting health and well-being among musicians. It's been an honor to talk to you today. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe for more insightful conversations with experts in the field. If you want to join me on my piano beginner course, then visit www.adultpianobeginners.com or my Facebook group, Adult Piano Beginners, or you can get a copy of my Hey Presto Adult Piano Method, which is a great tool for teachers and students alike on either Amazon or my website, www.marcelzidani.co.uk. Until next time, goodbye for now.